Lightning flickered in the abyss as the alien fleet trapped Earth's final ship. They had considered humans to be fragile prey, convinced that we would surrender. But they had never foreseen a single warship counterattacking with the fury it did. In one searing instant, it all shifted, and the aliens experienced true fear. It ends. From the first reports, the alien high command had treated the Earthling warship as a museum piece. They thought it was an antiquated craft that stayed together through slapdash fixes and sheer desperation. The aliens had watched humanity burn cycle after cycle on strained resources, how new technologies were slow to emerge and rarely made it to full production. Their scouts saw battered freighters limping between scattered human colonies, carrying hunks of salvaged metal. As a result, the alien empire believed that humans weren't a threat. They laid plans for a quick victory, sure that a single devastating blow would collapse the last vestiges of Earth's defenses. But in the core of that battered vessel, something amazing lived. Unlike the alien task forces that followed inflexible sets of rules, humans had learned to think on their feet. The warship, while old, came equipped with distinctive hybrid systems. Engineers fused borrowed alien technology with human genius, creating a hull that would take a pounding. The ship's computer core, rarely used due to its outdated tech, now harbored wily algorithms that adjusted to unconventional tactics. This combination of resourcefulness and grit made the warship far more lethal than the aliens ever suspected. When the scouts first spotted the warship, they sent breezy messages back to their high command. The original scans showed sloppy welds and panels that didn't line up. Weapons ports appeared rudimentary. Shields read as incomplete. Their analysts determined that the ship was a small annoyance. No one had any idea that those rough plates concealed experimental cannons that could fire focused beams strong enough to rip capital ships in half in one shot. Behind closed doors, the human crew prepared day and night, calibrating new targeting algorithms across thousands of simulated environments. They trained on close combat tactics in asteroid fields and pushed their wounded engines to the limit. Just the slightest outfitting, like stronger bracings in the hull, made them a vital advantage in the pipe. With every little success, they felt as though they were closing the divide between gossip and fact. So, when the alien fleet intercepted the warship in open space, they swept in with the hubris of conquerors. They were prepared to confront a hodgepodge craft, prime pickings for their numerical superiority. But as their formation closed in, something didn't feel right through their sensors. The reactor readings on the warship spiked in ways the crews could not explain. They noticed strange fluctuations within the shield array, as if the system were layered, each tuned to repulse different types of energy. Even the vessel's silhouette seemed to deform, suggesting hidden compartments or stealth modules that had gone undetected in earlier scans. In the command decks of the alien flagships, tension began to seep in. Reports filtered in from frontline scouts. The human warship was not retreating. Instead, it looped straight toward the center of the alien armada, engine output almost double. Control stations lit up with alarm bells. This was not a frantic escape from a sinking ship. It was a deliberate charge. As data feeds refreshed, alien officers fought to reconcile what they saw with what they were told. If the warship was a rust hulk, however, why did it so smoothly accelerate against heavy distortions of gravity? If its shields were incomplete, how could it hide its precise energy signature? Those questions mounted one by one. It came too late. The battle that they thought would be nothing like the real thing. Panic soon followed. The alien fleet had counted on a quick, overwhelming attack, assuming humans would fold after the first barrage. But now they had an opponent who would show no fear. The warship's approach was a scream of defiance, a display of capabilities still secret. The aliens prepared for war, unsure just how far humans had advanced. Others started to wonder if they had entered their own trap. Skepticism turned to horror when the warship finally opened fire, blasting a bolt of energy that severed a cruiser in half in one blow. With this single shot, they shattered their illusions of an easy conquest. The aliens scrambled to form defensive lines, issuing orders to recalibrate shields and weapon systems. Across the cold void, a ripple of disbelief echoed through every ship in the alien fleet. In that stark moment, they realized the truth. Humanity was no longer the meek species once cowering in a distant quadrant of the galaxy. The warship, hammered into shape by adversity, now stood a genuine predator in the night. Though the alien empire still believed in its numerical superiority, it now knew that this engagement would exact a terrible price. Their miscalculation had prepared the ground for a brutal war of attrition of firepower and wits, and the old certitudes would soon disintegrate beneath the weight of human will. Far inside the warship's reinforced command deck, the crew worked with a fervor born of desperation. The vessel was their last hope, a testament to the will of mankind to prevail against unthinkable odds. Through each of Earth's darkest hours, scientists and engineers had put everything into making over this obsolete hull. Now it had a host of advanced weaponry that could turn the tide of any battle, assuming the crew could hang on long enough to unleash it. One of its more frightening weapons was a new line of plasma cannon, perfected to achieve near-instantaneous ejections of superheated matter. A single miscalculation and the ship's power grid could be pushed to the breaking point. Yet in skilled hands, this cannon could rack and ball its way through the toughest alien armor. The gravitic destabilizer was another one of his favorite inventions, a device that warped the local environment of space to break enemy formations. Sustained bursts jammed targeting systems, and whole fleets had to start changing how they attacked. These breakthroughs had not come easily, of course. Prototype after prototype failed, and whole research stations vanished in disastrous tests. But with every failure, the aliens came closer and closer to the borders of humanity. But the survivors continued, convinced any sacrifice would be justified by the warship's success. Intrepid scientists scrounged components from rotting battleships, welding fresh alloys that could endure punishing heat and strain. Tens of thousands of scenarios were modeled, each leading to the next design change. Their shared mission: give humanity another chance to survive. Now that moment had arrived. The time for secrecy had passed. The warship floated forward, engines thrumming, a predator sizing up its prey. The alien fleet's sensors glanced and failed to understand the warship's shifting energy patterns. Meanwhile, in the command deck itself, the crew synchronized every subsystem, awaiting the word to begin their onslaught in earnest. Tension crackled in the air. The communications officer scoured urgent messages from the isolated human outposts, all carrying the same desperation in their pleas. If the warship did not succeed, all would be lost. The pilot verified final diagnostics of the propulsion system, gearing up for maneuvers that would send it beyond limits of safety. The tactical specialist monitored the weapon capacitors, power levels rising into the red. All down every corridor, crew members readied for the fight of their lives. They suited up, loaded munitions into automated racks, double-checked the hull's integrity. Silence fell as final status checks on the warship systems blinked green throughout display panels. There would be no retreat. If these aliens blew this ship apart, the last hope of the human race would be snuffed out in the chilly blackness. Yet fear did not reign here. Every face was marked by determination. All the crew understood that failure would mean not just their end, but extinction for the billions who remained on Earth and on scattered colonies. This realization became a rallying cry. They wouldn't be dubbed the generation that couldn't save humanity. Instead, they would be legends for having dared to strike, for not dying in chains. As the alien armada fanned out to surround them, the warship charged its primary cannons. The chirp of charging capacitors sang through bulk units, beating in time with the heart of every living thing on board. Scans from our probes revealed a maze of battleships and fighters, each rocking with deadly munitions. The odds were grim, but nobody blinked. They had run this scenario 1,000 times in simulations. Now it was real. In a single well-practiced flourish, the crew threw the warship's offensive matrix into action. Grumbles of energy vibrated. Each console flared with brilliance. The swirling glow of the gravitic destabilizer pulsated like a harbinger of doom. The human vessel would spring forth its collected mass at any moment. Over the alien lines, sensor alarms started to scream, picking up on a surge in power coming. By the time those readings could be fully processed, the warship had already made its decisive move. The pilot slammed the throttle to maximum with the strategic officer's final nod. The warship surged forward, its cannons primed to fire. For better or for worse, this one gamble stood between humanity and its entire fate. They could not outnumber the aliens, nor could they outproduce them, but they had a weapon far more powerful than any plasma discharge or gravitic wave: determination. Human tenacity was not something that could be measured by calculations, and no empire could ever be truly prepared for a race that had been driven to its absolute limits. In that heartbeat, the warship transformed into humanity's living testament to hope, armed, defiant, prepared to break the chains of despair. The first volley flared out like a supernova. Bursts of plasma flame lanced from the human warship's cannon, shredding the silence. The emptiness filled in a moment with fiery bloods of wild serpents that struck the densest horde of alien ships. Where those beams hit the cosmos, there ran explosions, which sent shards flying out into eternal dark. The aliens answered immediately, blasting their own bursts of energy bolts and homing missiles. The ship's world became a multicolored, violent tapestry of swarming lights and disintegrated debris. The human warship proceeded with deliberate precision in spite of the barbarity of the alien counterstrikes. Others piloted the bridge through deadly crossfire, rolling and pitching to evade direct hits. Whenever a missile came within the monster's sights, point defense turrets swiveled in vivid bursts of muzzle flash, shredding warheads to harmless spark. The superstructure of the entire vessel had rumbled under the shockwaves of near-miss hits, but it forged right on, steadily punching holes into the alien formation. In the interim, advanced targeting algorithms directed every plasma volley. The warship's cannons pounded into the enemy's shields, gradually overloading their protective layers. One alien frigate after another fell, as hulls melted into sludge. The larger capital ships countered by firing into saturation with heavy beam arrays. The warship could be crippled in a single shot from those massive weapons. But the humans were prepared for this. As the capital ship's guns cratered the fabric of reality inches from the warship's hull, its gravitic destabilizer fired, enough to will local space into a ripple that scattered the line of sight from those big guns. Beams that were going to punch through the human hull turned off and scarred friendly vessels, or lost coherence in a void. The alien sleep set in as their coordinated onslaught was falling apart. They rushed to recalculate firing solutions, but the warship continued to change its gravitational signature, never resting in a predictable place. Sensing an opening, the crew, from hidden bays on the warship's underbelly, unleashed a coordinated drone attack. Thousands of small, quick craft shot forward, simming the capital. Ships each bore specialized charges to deter armor plates and disable shield generators. The aliens tried to interdict, but the drones danced through the chaos, with near-instantaneous telemetry from the warship finding their target for them. As the drones hit critical points of enemy ships, a chain reaction followed as shields collapsed across the alien horde. Where their protective fields had glowed bright once, they now sputtered out, leaving thick hulls exposed. The warship exploited every weakness, pummeling them with precise strikes. Flaming wrecks floated away, the carcasses of ships thought to be invulnerable less than an hour before. On the alien bridges, panic ensued. Officers shouted contradictory orders as readouts indicated the catastrophic losses piling up. They attempted to regroup, forming tighter clusters to share shields. But this tactic merely rendered them vulnerable prey for the warship's focused beams. One feint of destroyers made a last-ditch flank assault, racing around behind the warship to attack her engines. Detecting the threat, the warship pivoted around at an astonishing speed and released a spread of high-yield warheads. It left no survivors of the would-be ambushers with the cascade of detonations illuminating the starscape. As carnage raged, the human warship pushed deeper into enemy territory. Every moment brought fresh threats. Mines moving in hidden formations, sophisticated salvos of torpedoes ready to home in on the faintest energy signature. Despite relentless impacts, the warship's reinforced plating and layered shields held. The corridors brimmed with damage control teams, rushing to seal breaches and patch flickering power conduits. They functioned with the expertise of old war dogs, every small repair ensuring the ship remained fit for action. On the alien side, their vaunted confidence crumbled. The wave of conquest they had promised their empire was no action and instead a collapsing into chaos. Their ships, built to cow lesser enemies, now encountered an opponent that fought smart and would not yield. On the smaller escort vessels, younger alien officers hesitated at the thought of retreat and held their positions, but were forced to continue the futile fight. But their superiors were insisting that they hold fast. No one wanted to acknowledge that the tides had turned so thoroughly in humanity's favor. Then came the pivotal moment. The giant alien dreadnought, riddled with weapons and roaring with pure force, pushed forward to deliver the killing blow. Its primary weapon, a massive bank of pulsing energy, readied for one last, annihilating shot. If what he shot found its mark, the human warship would be erased in an instant. The alarms echoed throughout the human vessel, announcing the imminent threat. But the human crew expected this gambit. At the strategic officer's command, the pilot drove directly at the battleship, avoiding frantic barrages. The warship's thrusters burned dull red, driving the engines far above their red line. The battleship's giant cannon targeted, whirling with deadly light. At the last possible moment, with scarcely seconds remaining, the warship activated the gravitic destabilizer, now at full output. Reality seemed to warp. The cannon's calculated shot went off axis, slicing through nothingness. By the time the human warship concentrated its weapons fire, the plasma beams traversed from the vehicles to the surface points, bursting the skins of the hull. The shields of the battleship fluttered, then failed. Armor plating melted, and then vaporized. In a thunderous flash, the alien flagship wasn't still, but it was finally no more. Nearby Allied cruisers were jolted and crashed together in a cacophony of buckled metal from the shockwave. That moment was the clincher. The aliens had lost control of a battle they had once thought of as a formality. Their formations lay in shambles. Its biggest warship had been torn to pieces. Each panic transmission, each desperate gear shift in tactics only added steam to humanity's momentum. The warship had demonstrated that not even the most powerful enemy could be overcome if you had enough wits, technology, and plain stubbornness on your side. This battle, the first truly decisive engagement, would decisively alter the course of the conflict forever. Dazed by the loss of their prized battleship, alien commanders worked to salvage the battle. Their sealed formation broke apart. Now they were just smaller battle groups, commanded by captains trying to recover lost honor. These captains worked together on a bold plan. Lure the human warship into a sector of space populated by disruptive anomalies, then trigger a huge convergence of firepower. There were electromagnetic storms passing through the area that would scramble sensors and drown harmonics on shields. If the humans went inside, they would be susceptible to a coordinated ambush. From the vantage of the human warship, it looked suspicious, the whirlwind of alien vessels pulling back toward that deadly sector. But the clock was ticking. Intelligence data indicated that alien reinforcements were on the way, perhaps with even more devastating weaponry. And the human crew considered its options. Following the foe into that anomaly-choked region was dangerous, but allowing them to regroup could be worse. In the end, they decided to push the advantage. Now was not a time for timidity. If the alien armada could get reorganized, humanity's slender chance of winning vanished. Perhaps not, so the warship prepared to throw itself into the dangers ahead, pouring power into specialized sensor arrays designed to mitigate the effect of the tempests. Each crew member took in a steadying breath, preparing themselves for a gauntlet of unpredictable currents and sudden interference spikes. As soon as they stepped over the threshold, sensors whirred to static. Electrical surges raced along the hull, and amped lights flickered inside. Cakes of cosmic lightning crackled through vacuum, fleeting yet deadly. The pilot threaded these lethal bursts with a honed reflex, relying on data from scanners that refreshed millisecond by millisecond. Surging energies swelled around them, challenging the warship's integrity to its very limits, defensive systems writhing against the tide. From those hidden pockets of calm within the storms, suddenly the alien battle groups converged. Torpedoes and energy beams poured into the warship from every angle. Shield alarms blared. The deck shook beneath the barrage. The warship responded quickly, firing at all angles, pulses of plasma lighting the darkness. Several alien ships exploded in blinding flashes, their gambit denied. Others latched on in tight whirls of dense jamming, waiting to pounce from the warship's blind spots. With advanced targeting scrambled, the crew was forced to rely on partial manual control and instinctive guesswork. The strategic officer was yelling out rapid-fire updates, quickly tagging fleeting sensor contacts as friend or foe. The pilot danced desperately, swinging the ship along arcs of lightning while keeping far enough to sidestep crash debris. Each passing moment was an eternity. In the pulsing dark, it was all instinct and nerve. In the midst of the confusion, the aliens deployed a secret weapon, a repurposed planetary drill warhead designed to penetrate hull plating. Launched from a cruiser hidden behind electromagnetic curtains, this weapon burrowed into contact, threatening to explode deep inside its target. The warhead crashed into the warship's flank, becoming lodged into an outer compartment. Alarm klaxons sounded as engineers raced to seal the breach before it could rupture the entire deck. To the serious of the threat, a damage control party entered the breach corridor. They toiled in a spray of sparks and wind, scrambling to overrule the drill's ignition. Above them, the hull vibrated with the nearest misses of alien guns. If they failed, they would be instantly annihilated, but they refused to give in. In one last desperate attempt, they cut the warhead's power couplings. The device fell dormant. Then, with a convulsive hiss, emergency bulkheads sealed off the area, trapping the warhead before it could rearm. The warship held on, maimed but still afloat. The aliens had anticipated that the human vessel would be more vulnerable to being trapped in their storms, but now they were confronted with an enemy that could not be cornered. Increased desperation drove alien captains to try flanking maneuvers and kamikaze runs. The prow of one corvette was sheared off when it crashed into the warship's forward plating, but it could not penetrate the human armor. Another squadron released decoy flares in an attempt to lure the warship's fire away from critical assets. But parallel efforts only spread their concentration, exposing chunks of the fleet to quick counterattacks. Then came the twist nobody saw coming. A powerful, sudden wave of electromagnetic energy coursed through the area, likely caused by the intense fighting. It radiated out in a glorious aurora, short-circuiting the unshielded alien systems. The warship, protected behind a partial screen of its hybrid tech, sustained only light damage. But many of the remaining alien cruisers and destroyers sparked then faded, losing maneuver control. Others whirled helplessly, crashing into one another or dropping headlong into the hot spots on the Frisbee's electromagnetic face. Seizing the opportunity, the vessel designed to carry human life launched a full-bore attack. Loading its engines beyond safe limits, it rained through the chaos, mining stranded ships. Explosions erupted one after the other, transforming the swirling sector into an attrition field of twisted metal. The aliens had bet that the fury of nature would be enough to hold the humans, but the storm betrayed them and delivered a deadly counterblow to their own ranks. Fatigued but undeterred, the warship had weathered the storm forever changed yet triumphant. Its shields flickered with residual static, smoke curling from charred plating. On the bridge, the crew exhaled ragged sighs of relief. They had crossed one of the most deadly stretches of space possible and had escaped a sophisticated ambush. In spite of grievous damage, they were ready for whatever comes next. Having thwarted the aliens' desperate gambit, an even more decisive confrontation beckoned. No longer trapped in the storm-torn area, the human warship turned its attention to the alien command flagship. This giant dreadnought was the nerve ganglia of the invading horde, directing every combative move through expansive webs of encrypted messages. For now, the dreadnought would be the last major threat, its massive hull missing solar spheres and developing heat trails behind it as it bristled with so many weapons that even the combined fleet so far met their match. Through battered sensors, the warship tracked the dreadnought's position near the maw of a swirling nebula. On the bridge, the tactical officer was evaluating reports of damage. Sections of plated hull breached, weapon banks operating in the red, fuel reserves dwindling. Yet the crew never wavered. If they could hit the center of alien command, the entire fleet might lose the last vestiges of cohesion. As the warship approached, enemy picket vessels tried to create a defensive ring. These smaller ships bombarded the human ships with relentless missile salvos. With little time to engage each, The warship barreled directly through the gauntlet. Point defense turrets flared, blasting dozens of inbound warheads. The hull shivered with the repeated impact, but it stayed intact. In the distance, a dreadnought was energizing a superweapon that could boil entire continents from orbit. Alarms blared throughout the warship. Sensor displays showed an energy spike unlike any they had ever seen. The dreadnought readied a weapon, said to destabilize fusion cores on contact. Sting the warship in a wide arc, the pilot tried to place it out of the line of direct fire. They unleashed a barrage of plasma beams, probing the dreadnought's shields. The dreadnought's barrier did not collapse. It absorbed the hits, shivering with ominous light. With no time to spare, the human crew executed a daring plan. They aimed the gravitic destabilizer, not back at the dreadnought itself, but at the rotating swirl of nebula behind it. The destabilizer's pulses set off violent disturbances in the cosmic cloud, sending ripples of plasma and ionized particles surging outward. It was a high-stakes gamble. The chaotic discharge could just as easily smash into the warship as into the dreadnought. But it was a risk they were forced to take. Frequent glowing rivulets of energized gas streamed toward both vessels. The dreadnought's enormous form folded behind swirling colors, and for a moment the warship lost a target lock. Then a thunderous crack echoed across the vacuum. Feral arcs of nebular spark leapt for the dreadnought's shields, depleting them fast. The energy crescendoed, exposing stress fractures in the barrier that had once seemed impenetrable. Sensing it was weak, the warship gathered its final reserves of power. Railgun slugs and bolts of plasma fused together in a single cataclysmic barrage, piercing the rent shield. The hull of the dreadnought groaned as plating ripped free, revealing decks of panicking crew. In a last-ditch effort to retaliate, the dreadnought unleashed its doomsday weapon. The beam stabbed through, scoring the human warship's after section, shredding compartments, escaping atmosphere. For a moment, it appeared that we'll destroy each other in a final annihilation exchange. But the crew of the warship acted with extraordinary speed. Damage control stopped the bleeding, and backup thrusters fired. Weapon batteries recharged for one last salve. Secondary explosions rolled through the monster dreadnought, blowing great holes in its hull. Sparks from failing power systems rained down on decks that crumbled from the pull of the vacuum. The coup de grace came when the warship drove a focus lance of plasma directly through the dreadnought's reactor core. A searing flash announced the death of the alien flagship. Its armored shell cracked and then tore apart, engulfed in a chain reaction that propagated outward in a spherical wave of blinding combustion. The smaller vessels caught in the blast radius disintegrated, their captains only just registering the horror. For a heartbeat, an uncanny silence swallowed the battlefield. Then the comm channels exploded with nervous signals. Trembling and with no commander to give orders, what was left of the alien ships began a rout. A half-assed retreat less than ideal that saw a few of them leaping into the higher dimension in a panic with unprepared calculations. Others capitulated on the spot, shutting off engines and sending out cries for mercy. The armada that once sailed unchecked across the universe, subjugating lesser worlds, now fled before a humanity that had proven itself impossible to subdue. As residual shockwaves rolled past, the warship drifted through the wreckage. Its hull blackened, engines sputtering, it emerged victorious against all odds. In that instant, the galaxy shifted. Word would get out that an underestimated people had beaten back the Empire's most powerful guns. The human warship was battered and bruised, but still stood as a symbol of defiance, a testament to what a cornered civilization could do when it refused to kneel. Scorched debris, swirling through the void, inscribed the embers of war upon a field of galaxies. The battlefield had fallen silent, the only noise that distant crackle of wreckage continuing to exude stored energy. Kinking hulls of alien cruisers, once emblems of imperial power, drifted alongside the shattered forms of drones from Earth's shameful warship. But among this graveyard of steel and fire, one vessel remained, a battered monument to humanity's resilience. In the hours that followed, the human crew scrambled to save their ship. Fires raged in some compartments, and life support systems struggled to keep breathable air flowing in areas that were compromised. Medicine and supplies dwindled, leading to makeshift triage in the hallways. And yet, relief resonated on every deck. They had survived the deadliest battle in recorded history and had shown that dogged willpower and bold strategy could fracture the bonds of submission. In other parts of the galaxy, remote outposts listened in on garbled transmissions recorded pieces of the last battle. They listened to the rumble of massive explosions, to alien captains screaming for reinforcements, and then silence. News of the enemy flagships. Defeat spread. To many species long put down by the Imperial alien, this news was a lighthouse in a storm. Silent hope ignited 1,000 secret souls, fueling the rounds of discussion about revolutions and coalitions that might finally turn the tide of history. Others, troubled by the devastation, defected or left the war. They got a taste of their own medicine. Stories of a lone human warship, besting the Empire's mightiest armada, traveled faster than any fleet could fly. Rumors spread of new loyalties forming within the interstellar void, species once terrified of our wrath, willing to consider an alliance with us for mutual protection. Within human territory, the celebrations were laced with mourning. Too many courageous had been killed. Resource shortages had remained dire, and the warship itself would require extensive work that no one station could provide in a single night. But for the first time in years, there was hopeful sky ahead. Courageous diplomats talked about solidifying agreements with reinvigorated allies, and engineers readied themselves to reverse engineer what was left of alien scrap for yet more improvements. The captain of the warship, referred to only by rank, never by name, spoke to the crew through flickering holograms, and their words were full of gratitude for the sacrifices made by every fighter, every technician, every strategist. They reminded the rest of us that this victory, while historic, was just the first step. The Empire, though hurt, was still great. But if they intended to be rid of terror across the face of the galaxy, they would have to pursue that goal, without relenting. And thus repairs commenced amid the debris field. Crews scavenged from downed alien ships to patch holes in the warship's hull. The vessel gradually rightened itself, under the watch of a rotating section of the crew. Newly emboldened colonies flooded messenger services with offers of medical aid or spare parts, even if inferior or outdated. But after the demise of the Empire, a fragile chain of cooperation formed among those eager to shake off the Empire's yoke. Far distant, secret redoubts of hostile overlords seethed at the degradation, and it was in their thousands that they spread across the stars, though divided in space, time, and distance. Still fleets, factories, and worlds under their control. In secret corridors, they hatched revenge, promising a 100-fold response for this rout. But underneath their threats was a shiver of fear. They had made the mistake of underestimating humans one time. They were not going to make that mistake again. For the warship's crew, every scar in its hull was a story of defiance. Each dent, each fused panel, every smoldering corridor were a testament that bravery and ingenuity could overcome insurmountable odds. As the ship began making way to jump to a safer area for further repairs, one last message was released on open frequencies, to friend and foe. It vowed that humanity will no longer be complicit by observing as aggressors devour entire systems. It declared that the era of meek subservience was over. Even the most powerful empire or mad tyrant who thought they could stamp Earth out of existence without consequence would soon learn otherwise. One human warship had revealed to the galaxy the fire that burned as the essence of humanity. Many more could soon join them. In the eerie silence of the battlefield debris fields, shattered pieces of alien dreadnoughts sunk, drifted, and tumbled aimlessly. Fires were scattered and glowing before slowly dying out. Yet in that blackness, the myth of humankind's home stood tall. One warship, an improbable engine of the powerless, had brought crashing down the greatest enemy, and in its aftermath, an entire galaxy now prepared for what came next. The future would bring new wars, new alliances, new revelations. But it knew one thing for sure. The aliens never anticipated a human warship would retaliate, until it did, changing everything forever.